Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have one more set of great revenge stories. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Reuse unfinished soups for the next customer? Lose your restaurant. This revenge story happened in the 90s when I was working after school as a line cook/chef's assistant at a Chinese restaurant. The place specialized in noodle soups, was the main attraction being our soup stock. The owner used a much-revered, passed-down family recipe. It consisted of freshly cracked pork bones, fresh spices, and fresh vegetables, all kept at a rolling boil for over 12 hours. It had to be started the night before, and the owner was very particular about the soup stock. If it ran out, then it ran out. He refused to cheat, as some places do, by adding water or powdered stock, etc. The owner himself was this really awesome old Chinese gentleman. He had some incredible stories. For example, he enlisted into the Kuomintang Chinese Republic Army in the 1940s and worked as a chef for KMT officers during World War II. He told us about how one time his division's HQ was run over and he had to escape on a push bike ahead of the advancing Japanese army. Eventually, when the Chinese Communist Party took over in the 50s, he was assigned to a steel factory to work for the rest of his life. He GTFO'd and eventually made his way to the U.S. as an asylum seeker. I digress, but my point is that he was an awesome guy and was genuinely kind and a considerate boss. He always made sure his employees were fed before the evening shift and let me study on quiet nights. His son, on the other hand, was a real piece of crap. The guy dropped out of college. His parents saved up for him to study medicine after 2 years. He floated in and out of jobs, but mostly stayed unemployed, living with his parents and using their money well into his mid-30s. He eventually started working at the restaurant, nominally as the front-of-house manager, but in reality did nothing but watch TV and take naps. While I was only a line cook, the old man and I got along really well. He trusted me and would routinely get me to make the soup stock the night before under his supervision. Sadly, the old man died after my 5th year working there. That's when the son took over. The mother had passed years ago. The son had zero cooking experience, but decided to take over as the chef. He didn't like the idea of putting the soup on overnight, waste of gas, and instead got me to do the prep the night before and would just switch the pot on himself in the morning. He would also routinely add plain water to the soup when it got low, so he could continue selling noodle soups. The most incredible thing, though, however, was, disgustingly, he got the waitstaff to throw customers' unfinished soups back into the stock pot for reuse. When I confronted him about it, he told me that it was no problem as the heat killed any germs and threatened to fire me if I said anything. Not surprisingly, customers started leaving as the food quality degraded. This caused the son to panic and cut even more costs. He fired most of the old staff and thus overworked the remaining. He couldn't fire me because I was the only one left who knew how to do the soup. He also stopped using quality ingredients and started buying cheap prepackaged stuff in order to reduce my prep work hours. After a few months of this, I got sick of his crap. As I was about to start college myself, I told him that I was giving him my notice. He, of course, took this poorly and told me that I was a loser. He told me not to bother coming in tomorrow, but I was to spend the remainder of my shift showing a recent hire how to do my job, stating that he would not issue my last check if I didn't complete a thorough handover. I laughed in his face and walked out on the spot. I didn't even bother chasing up my last check. As a parting gift, I sent an email to our local food safety board, informing them of the poor sanitary practice of reusing leftover soups. I helpfully also enclosed a few photos that I had sneakily taken of the practice. The board sent inspectors the very next day and closed the restaurant. There were other issues such as unhygienic bathrooms, uncleaned eating utensils. He was issued a massive fine and a list of undertakings to carry out before it could be reopened. The restaurant remained closed and was eventually sold off. I didn't bother chasing up what happened to the son, but I hope he learned his lesson and has done something productive with his life. And our second story. He was right. Many years ago, I got a programming job for a very new oil and gas automation company. They were the company that O&G companies would hire to build the SCADA systems for their wells. I had heard of the owner from other people in the industry as being interesting to work with, but if they had just come right out and said he was insane, they would have saved me some serious trouble. I was the only SCADA programmer in the office, and as such was incredibly busy with our clients. I was also the only woman other than the receptionist. Being in a male-dominated industry had never bothered me. The owner of the company, however, treated me like his secretary. He'd expect me to get him coffee, make appointments, etc., all while continuing to do my real job. The last straw was the day he berated me within earshot of a client for failing to pick up his dry cleaning, even though I just spent the last 4 hours on the phone trying to troubleshoot why a well wasn't talking to the SCADA system. Aside, it turned out the well was on fire and no one knew because it was so remote. I'd managed to last a month before I finally gave my 2 weeks' notice. Honestly, I could have just walked out, but I wanted to be nice and help him train someone to take my place before I left so our clients weren't left in the lurch. When I told him I was leaving, he went ballistic. He yelled that he wanted nothing to do with me ever again and to leave his office that minute because he didn't want to be in the same room for even a second. We would never work together again, and I'd regret leaving. He was still yelling when I turned around and left the building without saying anything. Less than a week later, I had a new job with an actual oil and gas company. Fast forward a few months, and I loved my job. I was on a very busy team that dealt with many of the company's well sites. We had so much work, in fact, that we had to consider bringing in outside contractors. Because I knew the systems we were dealing with better than anyone else on the team, I was put in charge of assisting the department manager in choosing an automation company to bring in. Being one of the larger O&G companies meant we were courted by every support company, so we had a ton of bids to go through for this job. One of the lowest bids was, of course, Insane Ex-Manager's company, so he was called in for a meeting. The department manager was running late that day, so she didn't get a chance to brief me as to whom we were meeting before we walked into the conference room, or I would have given her a heads up. We walked in, and the automation company owner's face lost all color when he realized who he was meeting with. Before either the department manager or I could so much as say hello, he started sputtering that there was a misunderstanding between us, and he had no hard feelings if I didn't. I told him that I had no hard feelings against him, but in his own words, we would never work together again. He was right. You know what? That's a great result. Well done. So you were able to go get another job so quickly and with more seniority and responsibility as well. And our third story. How I inadvertently brought down a crime ring. This all happened in 2008. I was 18. I'd just gotten a job at a new restaurant basically next door to me the summer after I graduated from high school. The owner of the restaurant, we'll call him Ken, was an immigrant from Syria. Relevant later in the story. Ken had spent most of his life in the States managing restaurants in Boston, but moved to our area to help some of his family with their struggling business. In the beginning, things were going well. We had a steady flow of customers and some pretty good food. About a month in, however, things shifted. Ken bought a new Mercedes and house. I thought nothing of it. He just moved to the area 2 months prior. Then things got bad. He closed on his house and made his employees move everything for him. Servers, dishwashers, bussers, everyone. He said if we didn't, we'd be fired. So we did. He then started taking vacations and leaving his head chef, who's never even been in a professional kitchen before this job, in charge. He was overwhelmed and just told us all to F off when we had an issue. Fast forward 4 months. Ken's now not paying employees. We started losing a lot of help. It's almost the end of summer, and in a few weeks I'll be quitting for college anyway, so I stuck it out. I started working 13 to 16-hour shifts 6 days a week, which promised good money. It was at this point I was promoted to head of house and got a raise, even though I wasn't being paid. I worked about 3 weeks that way, around 84 to 96 hours a week at $15 an hour. I then learned that one of my only friends there, a Mexican here on a work visa, had not been paid in over a month. He told me he was afraid of quitting because he didn't want to lose his visa like Ken had told him would happen. I was livid. I took my uniform off and stormed to the front of the restaurant where Ken was. It was our dinner rush, which at this point meant 1 or 2 tables of people who'd probably never come back because the food was garbage. I demanded payment for the last 3 weeks, around $3,600 on the spot. He blew up in front of everyone. Normally I'm passive and would back down, but not today. I was pissed. I told him that if he didn't pay me, I was calling the health board, the tax office, we were all getting paid under the table and no taxes were being filed on the business, and the police, and have the place shut down the next day. He paid me. I gave the money to our dishwasher, he needed it more, and told him to take the rest of the night and tomorrow off. The next day, I called the immigration office in our area and explained one of our dishwasher's situation to see if they could help. I set up a meeting with them, I picked him up, and away we went. When we get there, they asked if I could just fill out a statement to add to his file. Sure. I wrote everything. A few days later, I hear sirens. The restaurant's basically next door, remember? I look outside and see Ken being handcuffed and put in the back of a squad car, and the health department bolting the doors. I walk over to see what was going on. Ken was previously being investigated for fraud, and my statement was the evidence that set the investigation over the edge. I read in the paper some months later about it. In the raid, they found his ledger, which showed how much money he'd been skimming from the business, over 6 figures, and he was charged on that. Ken was getting deported back to Syria, and the rest of the sister restaurants were getting shut down pending further investigation. They never reopened. So this is the story about how a fresh 18-year-old inadvertently brought down a minor crime ring in my area, all because I was pissed they took advantage of a friend. Imagine that on a resume. Took down crime ring, making sure coworkers get paid. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.